this. Okay, I gotta get on my Zoom here.
Okay, love you,
Oh,
mommy.
I love you too, sweetheart. All right. Well, maybe we'll see you one of these days, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we'll figure it out. I just want anybody to feel any pressure, you know.
No, nobody feels pressure. I mean, Passover is, important holiday, I don't feel pressure to do it. I just think it'd be sad not to do anything.
Okay. All right.
Don't you think?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Well, let's see. Let me see if I can get Papu feeling better.
Okay.
All right, honey.
Okay.
All right. I gotta put these people in here.
Okay, Mama.
All right. Love you, sweetheart.
You have a good class.
Thanks. Bye, sweetie. Hello. Let's see. Everybody else is on mute. So ask to unmute. Ask to, there you go. Hi, Carla May. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Long time no see, Susan. How are you? How are you?
You know, we're all hanging in there. Hey, it's my friend Stephanie and Bev. Okay, well, this is good. I guess I have to let people in. So Carla May, of course, we've written a book together, but we didn't really make a plan for tonight, but we have plenty to talk about, don't we?
Oh, I guess so. I guess so.
Yeah. And I don't know. I keep hearing that people are buying the book. I don't know how many have it. This is our book. It's kind of pretty, isn't it? Didn't they do a nice job? I love the cover and I love the name.
It is beautiful. Yeah, they caught the idea of weaving of the new garment very well.
Yeah. Carla May, I have to tell you, I also found I found all of our notes from let me let this people in. Admit. Oh my God, Amy Smoocha, that's crazy. Admit all. Hello. Let's see. We'll give it a. There we go. So I found our notes from 2004.
Oh my goodness. That's right. I have a pack of them too, Susan.
Right. Is that really Amy Smoocha? That can't be Amy Smoocha, who I haven't seen in like 1,000 years.
It is, Susan.
Oh
Hello.
my God. Are you in DC?
Yeah, just outside. I'm in a weird visual space because I'm working my.
I see your face. Oh my God.
Mwah,
See, this is the good thing. I know there's a lot of terrible things, and I know we're all tired and we've had enough of this. But you know what? Had it not been for this, we wouldn't all be together tonight.
Oh, it was just there at the right time.
Yeah.
Yes,
so,
yes.
We have elderly sisters in Racine. And I have to tell you, it's just such a dear thing. An IT person created a room so they can go and Zoom their families, you know. And the first person down into the room to use the Zoom was Gert Geigel, and she's 100 years old.
For her. Don't you love that? That's a great story.
That's wonderful, wonderful. Well, I wouldn't
no stopping those ladies.
I wouldn't miss your combined brilliance for anything. And it's just wonderful to see you both. And Susan, much, much, much love.
And to you, Amy. Amy's our healthcare hero. Really, she got us going.
Yeah, now I help nonprofits whose staff are unionizing. That's what I'm doing with myself.
Great.
Yes.
I did a card check the other day for the union.
I happen to be aware of that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I'm the card check lady here. I love doing that for the unions. I feel really honored.
Yeah, and it's a good way to help them celebrate instead of thinking it as adversarial. To have someone like you, and yep.
Yeah, I always lift up the union.
Yeah,
So
Hooray.
they're struggling. They have such trouble today.
But I didn't mean to interrupt your prep. I was just worried about getting in before the deluge, so we'll see.
Okay, here we go. Let's see. Admit all. We got people coming. All right. You never know with how many people will come. But it looks like.
Well, Susan Sanner, my goodness. Hello, Susan. I hope you're doing well.
Uh-oh, we've got some professors on. Uh-oh. Now we got to be good. We got Marilyn and Larry. We got some serious academics here. We better be good, Carla May.
I'm retired. It's okay.
They're retired. Okay, let's see.
That just means the wisdom is deeper.
It's deeper, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, let's see.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Philip. It's so good to
Now-
see you.
Philip may be the only person that's read the book. I think he is. I think he might be the only person who's read the book besides us. Right? Although I did hear that oh, Carla May, you know who I mean, David Otten.
David Otten has read it. Yes.
He read our book.
Yes, he's read it from bottom to top to bottom. Yeah.
Admit.
Philip, you're muted. We can't hear you.
I think the IP has a program, unfortunately, going on at the same time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, what's the program?
It's this series that they're doing, interfaith views on different community social issues.
Cool. Well,
I'll be right back.
kind of got that. You know, we could really kind of start with, I don't think the Pope read our book.
No, I don't think so. I don't think he needs prayers. He's caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I guess that was that yesterday that he made this?
Yes,
Yeah.
yesterday or the day before. Yeah.
Would it be disrespectful if we sent him a copy of that chapter?
Oh, I think we should send him a copy of the book,
Okay.
not just the chapter.
Sounds
No, it was on PBS News tonight with Brian Massingale making the comment, which was very, very well done.
And on that PBS News story, did you see the professor from Fordham?
Yes, that's Brian Massingale.
Brian? And
That's
did you see
Brian
whose picture
Massingale.
was on the wall hanging behind him? Was Antona Ebo's.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Big picture of Antona Ebo right behind him.
Hated our book, right? One of the dedications of our book is
Yes,
Yeah.
Sister.
yes.
Oh, that's true.
And certainly she was fine with me as her white Jewish gay adopted son. So
Well, I'm just going to keep admitting people here. It looks like just I think we'll give it a few minutes because people are having, just kind of coming in.
If I may say something, I may be the only Catholic in the group at this point. I don't know for
Sorry.
sure. Pardon?
Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, then never mind. I'm sorry. I don't know. I only know one other person here, but as far as I'm concerned, yeah, please do send the Pope a book. I'm very disappointed in his recent statements.
There might be some lapsed Catholics.
And I am a part of the Belleville Diocese of Catholic Women, and I sent the link to this to our president, and she just sent it to all the women in our group. So I'm hoping that there are a few others joining us. And my friend Bob Case actually sent me the link originally. So
Hey, Bob.
thank you, Bob.
Very, Very cool. Well, yeah, we have a pretty eclectic congregation as well, Sharon. Um, we've got it's a pretty diverse community, even though it's definitely a synagogue and definitely Jewish. We have many people of many faiths that join us in all kinds of things. So
I have heard that. I admire that a lot. So.
great.
Not all churches or religious groups are so, faith communities, I should say, are so inclusive. So it's wonderful.
Well, it's a blessing for us. It truly is. So I think we can begin. Really, we've got a good crowd here. And I'd like to begin by, let's see, I'm getting the right light here. By introducing my partner in crime for really 30 years.
35.
35 years, thank you. Yeah, Carla May, I was remembering that our very first talk together in my file on you was the American Jewish Committee or Congress, I think, had us speak about the two Marys. Do you remember that?
Well, I do. I do.
Mary, I talked about Mary Magdalene. You said Mary, the mother of Jesus, was Christian, and I said Mary Magdalene was Jewish. that was our conversation, right? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, those are many years ago.
That was way before we even thought we might have a book.
That's right. We were still working with the model, Susan, in that beautiful model of, non-confrontative, the whole model of hospitality, that, you cannot talk with someone in a dialogue until you make room for them in your heart.
Right.
Then we've expanded it, room in your house.
Right.
But first, room in your heart. The person has to feel like that you're welcome in their heart. Then they can talk. Otherwise, they're always defensive, always.
So let me introduce to you someone who's lived in my heart and been in my home. We've celebrated Passover together. You've been with my family. You knew my mother. You knew my late daughter. I've been to celebrations of your anniversaries and been very honored.
Vow ceremonies.
Yeah, I have the job of admitting people to, so forgive me for that. Okay, so let me introduce to you to those of you who don't know her, and I'm looking at the names here, and I'm sure that most of you do. But I am proud to introduce my sister, who is also a sister, who also lives in my heart and has been in my home, because we have shown each other that kind of hospitality. Sister Carla May Streeter is a Dominican sister of the Congregation of Catherine of Siena that is based in Racine, Wisconsin. She's an emerita professor of systematic theology at Aquinas Institute. And of course, she still teaches and runs all kinds of groups. I mean, emeritus, she says she's retired. She's really not retired. She's working harder than ever, as far as what I can see, right? And she taught here for 35 years. She was awarded the Interfaith Partnership Lifetime Award, Achievement Award in 2020, but she and I have given awards together many times. We presented an award to Dr. Rana of blessed memory. And, we've sat together in many difficult times. We've been on the street together, protesting. I remember when Von Derek Meyer was killed, another unarmed Black teenager was killed in the Shaw neighborhood. I remember looking around and seeing Sister Carla May. So we are excited to share our book with you. She's the scholar, I'm the wannabe. I'm the rabbi that gets, as my daughter who has a real PhD says, oh, Mom, you have so many fake doctorates. You know, you get these honorary doctorates. I'm the only, I will say one of the, I'm certainly proud of my WashU honorary doctorate. I'm proud of the doctorate I got from the university I went to, St. Lawrence, where the only religion major was really a major in New Testament. So I majored in New Testament when I was an undergraduate. And, but the one that I'm very proud of is I did get an honorary doctorate. I was the first, and at the time it was the only non-Jew to get an honorary doctorate from Eden Seminary, where another one of my dear friends in ministry, Deb Krause, is now the president. So Carla May, do you want to talk a little bit about I thought what we do is we tell you a little bit about our process, and then talk about some of the more controversial areas in the book and how they were difficult for us to talk about. Abortion, for example, same-sex marriage, and gender spectrum kinds of things. We really talked about that. But the one that we began with was because one of the programs that we did together in 2004 was about the disputation, which was, you know, it was a play that the Jewish theater, the New Jewish Theater, put on, and it was, you know, about the disputation of Nachmanides in the Middle Ages, where he couldn't win, because if he didn't dispute, he had to prove Judaism was, you know, that it could stand on its own. And if he won the debate, he would have brought, you know, more suffering on his community. And if he lost the debate, he would have brought suffering on his community because they would have been demoralized. So we talked about that whole idea of conversion, forced conversion, and supersessionism. And I mean, that was our first really hard, I think, conversation. And I, you know, and our image was of the garment. We began with the idea that each of us has a garment, our stories, you know, the very compelling story of Jesus, you know, is a garment. It's a beautiful garment. It's a beautiful story. It's a story of redemption. And, you know, certainly as we come to Passover and Easter, a story that has changed the lives of many people. And for Jews, it's a tough story. You know, I remember we did a program on when Mel Gibson did The Passion. And I said, did he have to, Carla May? You know, did he have to make those little children in the hills of Jerusalem look like little devils, you know? So we've talked a lot about the Passion too, and how difficult that can be for Jews. And then, so we'll talk a little bit a process, some of the difficult conversations we've had. And then we'd love to open this up to questions. We'd love to hear what your questions are and what interests you about a dialogue, you know, between people who love each other, who really do see the world, have strong faith, and in many ways looks to their faith to save their lives every day. You know, two women who really are women of faith, and how different that is, but also where we found a common heart. So Carla May, you want to talk a little bit about the process? Because it wouldn't have happened without you. Carla May was the spiritual nudge that made this happen, I will say.
Well, the process kind of, it was almost intuitive. We began with the concrete conversations we've been having for many years.
Yeah.
And then about in 2004, I had a sabbatical semester. And so I contacted Susan and I said, well, you know, we've been talking for such a long time. why don't we tape ourselves talking? So for the whole semester, I went to Central Reform every week, and we'd hide out in Susan's office and turn the tape recorder on. And we talked about everything that was on our minds. It was, the difficult things of the women priests. It was Susan's daughter and the fact that she had been put on the heart list, and all of this and the reasons for this. And we taped it all. We just let the tape recorder run. And then after we did this, we thought, well, now what do we do with this? So we thought, well, if we're ever going to do anything with it, we've got to transcribe the tapes. So a dear person from Central Reform spent hours typewriting all the script from those tapes. And they were a mishmash. Yeah. They were everything that came to our mind. There was no order. We tried to kind of keep to topic, but then we'd go off in this direction. We go off in that direction. So we had to sit down then with those transcriptions and say, oh, this belongs over here with this discussion. This belongs over here with this discussion. And finally, the chapters started to take shape. And then we had to decide how many, and we decided what to put where. And then we'd talk some more, and we'd add some more that weren't on the tapes. I mean, we were never restricted by just what we had recorded, because new things would come up in the news. We'd talk about that and see what our different points of view were. And I think in the beginning of the book, if you read the introduction carefully, you'll see that we set ourselves some very, very important principles. That out of respect and consideration, we would never, in or out of our conversations, ever badmouth each other. Right. We would never do that, because we would want to be honest with each other. And so that's some of the structure of the beginning. But when I look back at it now, I think it's amazing. It's amazing. It's like a walk through the desert. It really is. So Susan, you can add some memories now.
Well, I would like to share with you what our principles were. So we did, and it was after the fact, not before that we came up with these guiding principles. We kind of looked back and said, okay, how did we do this? Because the truth was, and we did have some very difficult times. I mean, the ordination of the women priests, when CRC hosted that, I know was a very difficult time for you, Carla May.
Well, Susan came to the session. I sat down and she said, I think I have something to tell you. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to hurt you very much. And then she told me the decision she and their board of CRC had made. And I said, Susan, I'm very sad about, the whole situation, but I'm not sad about your decision. You have to make your decision according to your vision for your community. You can't just reject that in trying to bend over out of courtesy to the archdiocese or wherever. Each have their boundaries, and you have to respect your own. So that's how it went on. I even spoke personally with some of the women. I explained to them that as a teacher, I have to stand in front of a group and speak from within my tradition. At the same time, the tears ran down my face with what these women were going through. So, it's not a simple place to be a person standing in the gap. Right. It's nice to be on this side or that side. But when you refuse to be on either side and you try and stand in the gap, that's pretty dangerous. So I'll let you add to that.
Well, there is one story in the book that is, you know, pulled me into the breach with you, pulled me into the gap with you. As a Jew and growing up in a, in a very Christian culture and country, and always feeling a little bit other, um, and a student of history, and also, a student of the New Testament. um, Jesus, it was not the name. Jesus was not a friend. I got the story and I know it's beautiful, but I was not a friend to Jesus. Wasn't a comfort zone for me. I couldn't. It was it was like a, uh-oh, this is going to hurt me kind of thing. And then I started listening to you and started listening to what Jesus was for you. And you pulled me into another awareness of what Jesus could mean.
I remember, Susan, I remember just clear as a bell. It was our first session. I think it was our first time we sat down together. And you said to me, I just wish you would leave us alone. I just wish you'd let us be Jews and not bother us.
And not have to claim the Judeo tradition.
You said that, and then
it doesn't exist, and it's only causing me pain.
That's right. That's right. And then halfway through, I remember very distinctly, I almost wept. We were talking and talking and talking, and all of a sudden out of your mouth came, I'm really beginning to like your Jesus. I couldn't believe that.
Well, it was your Jesus.
It was from the beginning, and what the dialogue was doing, with both of us, because we were not the same when we finished.
And I hadn't really thought about this, and this story is not in the book, but not that long ago, but before COVID, I was in the hospital at Children's Hospital with two moms, and their baby had gone to term 9 months, but the baby was born dead. Something happened during the birth. It took too long. They let it go too long, and the baby was born dead. And one mom was Jewish and one mom was Catholic. And at the bedside, when we were ready to after about 3 days, we had to let the baby go. It was the right thing to disconnect the baby from life support. And I was there with the parents, the two moms, and the grandparents on both sides. And the moms were going to raise the baby to be Jewish. And so we had given the baby a Hebrew name, and I had given the baby a blessing and said the prayers for the baby to go from this world to the next. And I looked at the Catholic grandparents and I saw the pain. I saw their pain. And I asked them, and I'm telling you, I never would have had the chutzpah to do that before this book, before my relationship with Carla May. I said to the grandma, do you want me to baptize your baby? Should I baptize this baby? I asked the parents first. And then I said, can I baptize this baby? And I took some of that water from the sterilized water, because that was what we had. And I baptized the baby in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And it was a transformational moment. I mean, it doesn't change me. It doesn't change how I feel. It doesn't change my historical problems with what's happened in Jesus's name, but it opened up a whole world where, as you said, we could stand in a breach together and find peace. We've been reading the Psalms every day, and there's this moment in Psalm 85 that says, when you wrap truth with loving kindness, justice and peace kiss. And I I feel like Carla May, you know, our work together has allowed me to find a truth that's wrapped in loving kindness, you know, and because of that, you know, we're a little bit, I feel a little bit closer to shalom, to being able to be a vessel for peace in people's lives.
I have never heard that story, Susan. I thank you for telling it. That you know, that is totally pastoral. That is a total pastoral act, you know, of being able to go further than even your own tradition. That is an absolute marvel to me.
Well, you gave me the chutzpah for it. you,
Well,
you, you gave me
you
that
know.
holy chutzpah and taught me, you know, what that could mean to someone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that it had meaning, that it could have real meaning for someone.
It was, you know, using the image of our book, it was respect for their garment. The garments are different. We don't wear the same clothes.
Yeah.
But underneath the clothing, there's a person.
Right.
And we're much more similar at that level. And then, you know, as we go further, coming from the Kabbalah, you know, that beneath the body of the person, which is the meaning for the clothes, then there's this deeper space for the holy. And we all have it. And then there's the holy of the holy in the space.
Right.
And the more we get from the clothing to that inner core, the more we're alike.
Mm-hmm.
The more we're alike, but we wear different.
The soul. That's what we came to. We came to that the soul,
Yeah.
soul is God. Whatever God is, it's inside, because that's another part of this book. This book is really, I hope, and what we said it was, is a feminist look. Mm-hmm. So not only do so we had three key insights that we tried to go through the book. The first was a deep listening, that we would listen without thinking about what we were going to say, but we would just listen. So we practiced this, we had this practice of deep listening. The second key insight was this insight about the garment, that we had to always be clear. Were we talking about the garment? You know, we got into a whole thing, you know, when Adina was really sick, about stem cells. Remember our stem cell conversation? I don't think that, I don't know if that, I don't even remember if that got into the book, but we did a whole thing on stem cells because it was so controversial, especially the embryonic stem cell research. Yeah. And, you know, we studied it and, you know, I was all for it because it was going to save my kid. And, you know, it was an embryo, wasn't a life. But then, you know, we talked about, okay, when is the beginning of life for you? It was different for me. But we found a way to really understand the garment and know when we were talking about the garment, when we were talking about the body, when we were talking about the soul that has an imprint, and when we were talking about the soul of the soul. So we really tried to pay attention to that metaphor from the Zohar about and figure out what we were talking about in each thing. And then finally, we had this feminine consciousness. You know, what does it mean? I kept wanting to use the word feminist, but it's somehow kept getting changed to feminine, which was fine with me. So we you know, it was a feminine, it was a perspective from a woman's perspective, you know, and you know, and that was another conversation we had. You know, I don't know if anybody's read any of Carla May's other books, but she's got a book about, it's very steamy. It's about intimacy, and it'll blow your mind. It's so steamy. So I tried to get some of that into our book too, you know, about intimacy and about how, you know, how you talk about being a celibate woman, but that doesn't mean that you don't know intimacy, right?
Right.
right? And so we talk about that a lot, and we talk about it as women, you know, and then finally this notion of going from disputation, I'm right or you're right, to dialogue, when we really find a way to I don't know, to live with our truths together. And
And
there's
that takes us to even to the point of publishing, because we were not settled on a title.
Mhm.
And it was, well, a very strange happenstance. I was up in Milwaukee at a meeting for the bishop who's up there, Bishop Skilba, who's a friend of mine. And we were having drinks and hors d'oeuvres. And this gentleman and his wife were standing there, and his wife was Jewish, and he was a publisher. And I
Yeah.
said, "Oh, well, we're working on a book, and you might be interested." He said, "He gave me his card, and he said, well, get in touch with me." So it was with Paraclete Press, and it was this man who said, "No, no, 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 don't use those metaphors about a garment for your title. You
Mhm.
have to smack people right where they are, right where they are."
Mhm.
And and when he told us this is what you should call your book, he was right. He was just smack on. He said, "You are avoiding the sin of certitude."
Right.
And that's what the two of you are doing in that book.
You know,
You're refusing to have rigor mortis of the brain.
well,
Rigor mortis of the intelligence is a straight-laced certitude that you understand everything about somebody when you don't. And it's arrogant and it's sinful, because you will never walk in someone else's shoes completely. It's not your experience. You didn't grow up in that tradition. You can't pretend you understand it. You have to listen and have them tell you what it means and receive it in your heart. And that's what the two of you are doing.
yeah.
It was very fascinating how things came together, don't you think?
Oh yeah, 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 and the fact that it took us so long.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Well,
not.
there was a lot of life in between.
Yeah,
We,
we were.
we did the basic work in those early years, and then you had your tragic loss, and you needed time. You needed time. You cannot do business as usual after a loved one like that is gone. You can't do that. So we just put it on the back burner. We lived our life and tried to heal, And then I guess it was last fall or fall of 2019, I forget now, that we just got it. And we said, we're going to finish this thing, right? And Susan said, yeah, we're going to finish this thing.
I did. Carla May, I'm not sure you remember this, but the sin of certitude came from a sermon that I gave at the college church.
Oh, no, I didn't remember that.
And I got blasted for it in all the Catholic newspapers. I got blasted for that, for giving that, because there is certainty.
That's the delicacy. See, that's the delicacy. There's a difference between certainty, which each of our revelations gives to us.
Mm-hmm.
We are certain in our faith. We are not wishy-washy. But we avoid certitude, which is rigidity, or thinking that mine is perfect and yours is not, or yours is perfect and mine is not. When we start moving into that judgmental space by which we're judge and jury over somebody, then we can be pretty sure that we're afflicted with certitude. And that's sinful. That's arrogant. It's pompous.
I hear you.
And he put his finger on that, and we risked it. We risked it in choosing to go as he directed.
Yeah. And I will say this was one of those areas that, our goal was, we kept saying that our goal was to weave a new garment, to somehow at the end of every chapter, not only share our thinking, our feminine, thinking on all of these things, but also to through our relationship and through our deep listening and our conversations, really come up with maybe something new, something that no one has thought about before, and that we were weaving a new garment. And I have to say, and some things we were more successful than in other things because of this issue. For me, the certainty and the certitude, I'll correct myself, in knowing, for example, in knowing when life begins. We don't have that in Judaism. We say there are certain things we can't know. Maybe someday we will know because science will help us know that. But we have in Judaism, we say we have this conversation 1,000 times. We have beliefs, right? We don't have a dogma in Judaism. So that was where we kind of, we found ourselves in tension, in this amazing, wonderful tension that we felt really could bring us to a new awareness. Because in Judaism, we have beliefs, of course we do, but we know that beliefs change. The first word of the Psalms is Ashrei in Hebrew. Ashrei is, happy is the person, right? Someone. It's not happy in Hebrew. Ashrei is not really happy. It's forward. It's forward. It's moving forward. And so Judaism is, I believe my understanding of Judaism, which was what gets me into trouble too, I'll admit that, is that it doesn't have, we live with a lot of doubt. And it's in the questions that we find our faith. And we struggled with that, you and I.
Yeah.
We struggled with that.
But see, that goes back to that deep ownership of it being a feminine enterprise. And yes, there is a difference between feminine and feminist. I was sat down by a wise woman years ago and I said, I'm not a feminist. I'm not going to be one of those radical people that's burning bras and that are telling men they can all go to hell. She sat me down and she said, Carla May, she said, there are 3 kinds of feminists. The first kind is the radical kind. They just simply want to be against. The second kind are legal feminists. They want the laws straightened out and they want equal inheritance laws. They want the laws straightened out. That's all they're interested in. And then there are the inclusive feminists. They want equality, they want fairness, they want justice, they want mercy, they want compassion for both sides of the gender spectrum, both sides. And then she looked at me and she said, and Carla May, can you afford not to be a feminist like that? Well, that changed my whole perspective on it. But the feminine in writing or the feminine in thinking is always, in my view, it's always looking for emergence. It's always looking for possibility. It's always looking for forward, for going, for exploring, that you start from somewhere and you own where you start, but then there's all sorts of possibility. And that's why the image of weaving a new garment was really led us along as we conversed. We would talk about things from the Jewish tradition and then things from the Christian tradition. And then we'd say, well, what would this happen if this came together? If the threads came together instead of opposition, either oring it, that you're either all wrong and I'm all right, or you're all right and I'm all wrong, to stop that objectivizing. See, the males among us are very, very good at clarifications. It's a masculine gift, I really believe. Objectivity, practicality, and clear it up, make it clear. Women are saying, well, what will it be tomorrow? It's this today, but what about tomorrow when these questions come in? And this frustrates a lot of men, because they're always looking at what's going to come forth, because that's the way their minds are created.
So,
It's possibility, it's fruitfulness, it's, where are we going from here?
I remember having this conversation. And I remember saying, Carla May, we got to do a chapter on gender, on non-binary gender, we got to get out of this binary stuff, because if we're ever going to challenge the patriarchy, which is really what I hope I do in everything I do, not, and it has nothing to do with men. It just has to do with this structure that we're stuck in.
That's right.
That I really think, the patriarchy has been very,
yeah. And see, I even said, when the priesthood question, I said, nope, I don't want to go there. And you looked at me like I fell off a Christmas tree. And I said, no, the way the structure is right now, it's inhibiting, it's stultifying, it's boxing, it's putting in a silo. Nope.
Yeah, you said, I don't want to be a priest. I don't want to be like that. You said, it doesn't go far enough. It doesn't break down enough of the patriarchy.
That's right. And I believe it or not, I got that insight from abbesses of the Eastern Orthodox Church. The Eastern Orthodox abbesses, when asked about the priesthood question, they say, we leave that to the men. We have more important things to do.
So some of what I'd love for you, if people can put maybe some questions in the chat, since we're such a big group, but we'll also, I hope you've got questions, and, comments, and we'll take maybe just a few more minutes to dialogue here, because, we're talking on one level, and, again, in the pastoral level, human to human, it's not difficult. But when we get to that legislative level, when we get to a place where the Catholic Church, right now would not be for marriage equality. I mean, that's just not, we got to tussle on that one. We got to argue on that one, because that's justice. That's human rights for me. What's happening in the Missouri legislature right now with these bills that are trying to, punish children who are trans for being themselves, and punish their parents for not being able to care for their children in the way that they need to, is just how do we, as people of faith, as women of faith, how do we not protect our children? You said so many times when we were doing this work, God doesn't make mistakes. When we talk about, non-binary identifications, when we talk about trans issues, when we talk about, gay and lesbian rights, right? We talk about people are who they are, right? And that when it comes down to people we know having their joy stripped from them because of what our laws are and how our faith traditions, shape that. We also, kind of got into difficult conversations there as well.
And just, this time is limited, and we want to allow for questions, but just so that you all know that we plan in April, possibly April and May, we plan a podcast on the book itself, where we're going to go through we're going to read the book to each other and then expand on every chapter. We're going to really deal with that, and that'll bring in some very contemporary things, but that's in the works. That's coming. That's part of our plan.
Yeah. But we better send the Pope a copy of our book first. So my friend Rhodey asks, what kind of feedback or pushback have we received from various religious communities regarding the book? I don't think anybody's read it yet.
No, I've heard
Yeah.
just a fellow Catholic read it and said that thank you for the gift you've offered, both of you, to your various communities and to our community together. So I've just heard from one. I have two other people in the Catholic community that are doing reviews. So they're both men and they're both theologians. So they're looking at it from that lens. But that'll be in the year ahead when their reviews come and they get published, or if they just send them to us. I don't know what they're going to do.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll have an answer. Yeah, I think I see Marilyn or Larry. Is there, you want to
When you say something like, God doesn't make mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
what keeps that from slipping into an expression of certitude?
The fact of who God is, I would say, Marilyn, because we cannot put that mystery within our small human mind. It's like trying to put the Pacific into a thimble. Therefore, there are what we call known unknowns. There's known knowns and there's known unknowns. We know there's a lot we don't know. And so what we're saying in an expression like that is we have to always allow that within the mystery of the holy, there is some more to be brought forth that none of us have the ghost of a notion of. And when we put the lid on that, then we are confining God into our little container. And we can't do that. In both of our traditions, God is omnipotent, God is mighty, God is powerful, loving, and tender. And we do not put a lid on him, her, anywhere. That's kind of what. You want to push that further?
I'm wondering why any words wouldn't have the risk of seeming like an expression with certitude.
You're absolutely correct.
So
You're absolutely correct. And we have not only used them in that way, but they have become bludgeons. We have beaten people with our words. And we insisted that they be wounded and killed by our words.
Yeah.
Wouldn't the most uncertitudinous mode of expression be simply to not use words at all?
Well, see, that is an ultimate solution, but then we can't communicate. So we have to take the risk.
You talk about other things besides God.
Oh, yeah. It's politics, it's economics, it's social, it's everything. We are the only species we know of that articulates, that speaks. And we have to be, well, scripture says you got to watch your tongue. It can create a fire. I think we have lived through times in our history when people were just beating each other up with their words. I mean, we know what that is. And we just refused. When we tried, when we wrote, we were not going to continue that. We were not going to model that. We were not going to win by beating someone, by abusing someone. We were going to dialogue, which means you have to listen before you reply. And when you reply with love and consideration, knowing that half of what you're saying, you know, you don't understand. That takes a distinct posture when you're with somebody. It's not comeuppmanship. It's not, oh, I'm going to win and you're going to lose. You just put that aside, so you don't get in that rigidity. Instead,
Right. And
you know, you offer your certainty, what you believe, and then you listen.
And you know, it's so interesting. I so many times in our conversation, and even in trying to edit this book, which was really impossible. It was like we had thousands of pages of
The
things.
editing was almost worse than the writing
so
of it.
hard. Oh my God, it was so hard. It was like, are you kidding? I can't do this. And then we'd lose. I mean, things crashed, you know, computers crashed, papers got lost, and boy, did we have a mess. And the wonderful woman that did the transcription got sick and she died. You know, she was just a dear friend. And anyway, so many things happened. But you know, Marilyn, one of the things that we did struggle with is using God language, because it is so limiting. It is so full of certainty. It's such a problem. And that's really why we tried to talk about the garment and the body and the soul of the soul, and not talk about God, you know, not use God language, because it's so filled with theism and patriarchy and stuff stuck to it. We tried not to use that language a lot. I tried not to use it because it is a stumbling block. It is limiting, and it does conjure if it does conjure certitude. I get that. I'm not sure if that's what you were reaching for there, but I get that. I do.
I appreciate both of your answers.
Yeah, see, certitude means my idea is done. It's done. It's perfect. My idea is correct, completely. Total, absolute certitude. You know, that's God. That's not me. That's God. And so I always have tentative certainty, because I'm going to learn something tomorrow from talking with Susan. And what happens is then my understanding of my doctrine and the belief system expands in depth. It expands. The meaning is richer than when I didn't talk with her. Because then I was narrow within my little tradition. I heard it, you know, there. I knew what it meant. Was trained in it from a child. But when we dialogue with someone who's not in our tradition, then all of a sudden, it doesn't mean my understanding isn't true. It's sometimes truer than it was before, because she put a whole depth to it that I didn't have before. It's a very interesting thing. It is a growth, not a deprivation. That's the opposite of a growing certainty versus a growing certitude, at least as we understand it.
So can I ask you a question? In reading the book, what I think is so hard for lay
There's
people.
one more person that read the book.
What's so hard for lay people in discussing religion is not knowing all the facts and the details, and somebody throws a citation at you and you don't know the counter. But here are the two of you who know it all and are willing to step back and not go head to head. I guess what I'm looking for, how would you define the phrase that what a lot of us end up doing, lay people debating these things, is, first of all, we debate them, which,
Yeah.
but then we'll get to a point and say,
Someone has to
well,
win.
yeah, let's agree to disagree. And that's not what you did with the book.
Right.
So can you give us other words on how to, when you get to that point, another way to look at it through your own language?
Well, you know, we had some guiding principles and we put them right in here, you know. We never participate in a polemic or a debate that set the tone of confrontation. You know, we wouldn't, especially when we were in public, we really talked about, we really tried to model not doing that, really tried to model. We could confront each other, you know, but in a
We did it by a question. See, you
Right.
can approach another by a counter statement, which looks confrontational, or you can not agree or think that the person needs to be teased out a bit. So you proceed with a question. Could you explain this more to me?
yeah,
That's what we did.
right.
Really, what, you know, you asked Philip how we did it by questioning rather than by statement.
I can give you an example of a moment when that happened. And it's really in the second principle that says we strive to be collaborative, not competitive, and we wouldn't apply pressure to change the other. When we talked about that, I said, Carla May, you know, you explain to me missionaries, explain to me why the Catholic Church. I mean, there was a moment when we were working on this book that I can't remember which archbishop it was probably Burke, who brought in this this order of priests to convert the Jews. He brought in an order of people to convert Jews. I said, Carla May, what's with this? You know, how can we be? How can that be okay? If we're going to really respect each other and love each other, why would you want to change me? And Carla May said something to me that really went to my heart. She said, Susan, I don't want to change you, but if you have something that you love so much, if you have something that gives you such joy, you want to share it. That's where that comes from for me. You know, and you know, that's not a Jewish way to think. I can promise you that. You know, we say, do not do unto others what you would not have them do unto you, you know, because we've been done to so much that's our perspective. But it changed me. I heard that. And I got up from that conversation thinking very differently about the goodwill of when you have something you love and when you have something that brings you such joy.
See, what Susan is saying is the difference between proselytizing and evangelizing.
Mm.
Now, most of you are experiencing in the Christian community proselytizing. That's the forceful. That's getting the baseball bat out. You're going to hell if you don't convert language. That's proselytizing. It's threatening. It's making you feel less. It's making you feel other. It's making you feel like you don't have enough. It's making you feel all sorts of ways by disrespect and coercion. But evangelizing is talking about what Susan was describing. When you've got such a wonderful thing you want to tell somebody, but you can only do it by inviting them over for a cup of coffee. You don't get your baseball bat out. And see, within the Catholic community, if you read the documents of missionary activity, even in the days of colonization, there were two forms. There were the missionaries who baptized the native peoples after the military crushed them. And that's real. But alongside of that, there were missionaries who especially, I think of my own Dominican brothers down in Dominican Republic. The conquistadors were terribly abusing the natives. And of course, the Dominicans had come along to baptize. And the Dominicans got up in the pulpit on Sunday and said, you continue doing this to these native people and you are going to be damned. Well, the conquistadors and their wives got up and walked out. And then they went over to the rectory. And they pounded on the door and they said, we want the priest who wrote that homily, that sermon. The entire community of all the Dominicans present came to the front door and they said, we did. Now later on, that bishop, the bishop that was among the Dominicans, was going to be killed by those conquistadors because they weren't playing by the script. So what I'm telling you this for is that there were two forms. One was proselytizing and one was evangelizing.
Yeah.
And you know, we get most of the news from those who use the bully club, you know, and that's still practiced by some Christian groups. Well, let me just tell you, I'm sorry, as a Christian, that's not acceptable. And then you've got people like Bartolome de las Casas, who goes down to Uruguay and goes into a certain part of Guatemala and because he was a lawyer, he went back to Spain and he got a permit not to take any military with him. And he spent 5 years in the central part of Guatemala and sometime in Uruguay. And he wrote a little book called Love Alone. Love alone. No force whatsoever. And to this day, those people are deeply, deeply committed, not by force. But, you know, those stories aren't often heard. Most of the models we know are coming from this proselytizing model. Christendom, it's called the Christendom model. And then there's authentic evangelization, which can be done by invitation only.
You know, yeah, there's you know, we've got our St. Louis here, you know, too. Interesting. You know, just to something that might be interesting for people to know is in Guatemala now, they've gone from the Catholic Church to the Pentecostal or evangelical.
Yes.
I don't know. They're kind of, it's a very interesting thing. Everything in the hills of Guatemala now is Yahweh, and it's like something's changing there too. I don't know, but I have a couple of questions. One is interesting to both of us from Bob Case. Have people, you know, because and Bob, this is so emblematic of every conversation Carla, May, and I had was, and what does this mean for healthcare reform? And what does this mean for, you know, marriage equality? And what does this mean for, you know, a woman's right to reproductive freedom? I mean, every conversation I would, because for me, it's the application, you know, as a Jew, I want to know how this is going to work in the world and in people's lives right now. And, you know, Carla, wait a minute, step back. Let's think this through, you know, let's not just jump to this. Let's really parse it. Let's take it apart and figure it out. So here's a question. Have people of goodwill in St. Louis faith community reached out to Josh Hawley to help him understand that there are other American society points of view? Well, that would be very nice. I instead of, you know, saying that I mean, I think I was quoted in Time magazine saying he sold his soul to the devil. Bob Case, I probably should have called him first. That would have been the much nicer thing to do. I don't think I said the devil. I think he sold his soul for whatever.
Well, it's just similar to what the McCloskeys did too, selling their soul for a gun. But I'm not going to go there. By the way, Susan, I was there in the crowd in front of the McCloskeys' house when they were pointing the guns at us. So I can speak to that. I know. And I remember what you said about that. You were quoted about having had problems with them before, since, of course, CRC abuts up against the property. But it's just that in general, that there's so many people out there who, like Carl May says, have that certainty or certitude about their belief system. And there are a lot of them out there. We just saw them we had 4 years of that. And how do we deal with that? That's really where I'm going with it. I've heard a lot of what you said, little bits and pieces of how to deal with it, but could you address that?
Yeah, I mean, it works with Carla May and Susan Talvey because we love each other.
Right, exactly. That's what I mean. But when you go beyond that, yeah.
Right. How does this, well, I mean, one answer, maybe it's naive, but is to grow this, is to share how this works and to grow a movement of civility, to grow and for us to be louder and more, and to bring people more onto the side of this kind of way of being. That doesn't seem to be happening right now. So how is it that we do? I was very hesitant to speak up about the McCloskeys because we teach our children not to shame people, and not to call them out, and to reach out and to try to listen and find a way to make peace. But sometimes people go too far, and they were going to speak at the Republican National Convention, and that was a line too far for me.
Right.
So, I broke my rules and I called them out. And I've done that a number of times. So how do we, though, as people of faith, when faith is being used by people like Josh Hawley, how do we, how do we become part of the solution and not become part of the problem?
In my view, the basis of hate speech, the basis of hate action is very often fear. Fear that, eventually works itself into anger, because the people involved are angry that they're afraid.
Mhm.
But when fear is at the root, you do ungodly things. It probably sounds Pollyanna, but you have to somehow start with the fear. They can't hear you even if fear is paralyzing them. They can't hear what you're saying. They can't hear your point of view. They cannot hear. They're deaf because the fear is so loud.
Yeah. And yeah, I so get that. And I think that there is this movement. I think people are afraid of the browning of America.
Mhm.
And I think they're holding on by their fingernails, the white supremacists and the white nationalists. And I think we can understand, how that's happening. And I think understanding it may help us to unravel it and to deal with it in a smarter way. But I will also say that that no, I lost my thought. I'm sorry. But yeah, so I guess we have to understand it too. And the other thing is about really building allies, and also not letting them, and this is what I want to say, is not letting them own, the religious voice. And this is a conversation I have with, a lot of people of faith who are progressives, is they don't get to own that voice. They don't get to own the religious voice, um, they don't get to, oh, I know what I wanted to say. And this was an issue that Carla May and I had. I said, Carla May, that the New Testament is an anti-Semitic book. It's anti-Semitic, you blame the Jews, you blame the Pharisees. There's no way around it. Right. Um, and we're not going to change the holy book. I mean, look at the Bible. We got a lot of schmutz in there too. There's a lot of stuff in there that's problematic too. So what do we do with that? How do we deal with that? Especially for people who believe, who are Orthodox or fundamentalist and believe that this is the Word of God. And I think that we have to. It's our job to be loud and to reframe and to be loud.
And maybe to ask, what is being revealed in that holy book? What is being revealed?
Right.
Well, we say, well, God is being revealed. Well, and what else? We are being revealed.
Yeah.
And that's harder to take. Because we come off as a bunch of pretty bad sinners.
Yeah. And
in both testaments.
We do. And I think that Marion Rosen wrote something in the chat that I think is really important. There are people who are afraid, but I think there are also people who provoke that fear and use it to their own advantage. And I think that that's something we spoke about in our book a lot. The difference between self-interest and the common good. And where do we get out of our own way for the common good? And that, for me, is to be a feminist. To be a feminist for me is these women's values that say nothing's more important to me than leaving the world better than I found it from it.
Right. That's right. And relations with persons, as absolutely critical.
Relationships, exactly. Relationships. How many stories do we know about people who, today there's a video that's going viral of this, fundamentalist Christian man whose daughter is trans and went to Jefferson City and said, look, I'm one of you, but I can tell you, you're doing something that's going to hurt my daughter, because until I let my daughter be my daughter, she was miserable, and she, it might have been a real tragedy. You have to understand this, so, I just think that the notion of the way that we say it in the religious community is, but I think we can frame it in lots of ways: less self, more God, less self-interest, more common good. That's also, and I think Carla May, I think we did a really good job of listening to each other through all of the different issues and really fighting for the common good. And Helene asks, what are some of the points of intersection that you found in your two faiths? And I can answer that also with, there was another question from Amy Smoocha. What is the most surprising personal learning that resulted from your dialogue and curiosity? And I can answer those together for me. I'll make it brief. I didn't write that soul section, the section on the soul, until after my daughter died. I read and reread what Carla May wrote about the soul. And as much as I thought I understood Jewish teachings about the soul, I have to say, I really didn't understand. the soul and what happens when you die, and the attachment I have to the soul, and need to my beliefs about kind of what happens, what the soul is, and what happens when it leaves the body. So that for me is one of the things that was surprising, that I got when I needed it, most, and I think was able to share it with Carla May. And I think it was an intersection. I think it was a place where we found, some kind of a common ground.
I think for me, what was revelatory for me was the depths of Susan's understanding of the Jewish story and of the meaning behind so much of what went on. We very often, because we're not from within that experience, we look at the Hebrew scriptures, the Jewish scriptures, as from outside. We look at it as it were from beyond our experience. And she brought that to me from within inside. That was the gift, I think, that one of the main gifts, that's one of them, of our conversation. That from within, she opened up some of what those scriptures said.
Thank you for saying it that way. Sometimes people say, "Did you make that up?" But no, I really appreciate that. That I very much appreciate that, Carla. Any other questions? Any other questions? So here's one more while we're kind of waiting for more questions, and you can unmute if you would rather than put it in the chat. But one of the other principles that we adhered to was we accepted that the heart of God, and again, there's that God language, but the heart, of whatever we are part of that's greater than us, the heart of God has many rooms, and that God's desire was for us to make decisions for the common good of both of our communities. And I think that really became a guiding principle, whether we were talking about something theological or we were talking about something very practical, like, marriage equality or healthcare for all, or, even a woman's right to choose, and it wasn't always easy, but you know what? It was always loving. I was never afraid. I will say, Carla May, I was never afraid to bring up a subject with you. There's always room in your heart and in your mind for, a conversation. And, I think part of that is because we were, even though we both had our ideas, we're both pretty strong women with our ideas. I think we recognized that we didn't have to be fully formed, that we were becoming. We were still, even as, started a lot younger. I mean, 30 something years ago, we were both a lot younger. Look at us now. Oh my God. Look at, and I would still say this process has allowed me to be okay with not being fully formed. That makes sense. So what's your favorite chapter, Carla May?
Oh my, I don't know. I'd have to say I don't know, because if I read one, I say that's it. Then I read the other and I say that's it. No, there's so much, that we talk about in those chapters that one has heavier weight now, and then I'll read another, and the other has heavier weight. You know, it is, I think the book is open. I don't think the book is finished.
Mm.
You know, I really have a sense that we could continue talking.
I think we are.
And I think, see, that's why the podcast is probably going to be some really kind of very interesting.
So one of the things that might be kind of interesting for people to know too is that chapter 5, we really did not talk about, you know, this, our conversations were long before, you know, Mike Brown was murdered, long before 2014. We finished long before that. But we felt like in 2021, we had to have a chapter on race. And so we that was something that we added on our kind of our journeys since, you know, Black Lives Matter, kind of the movement kind of took hold of us.
I'll give you an example of, you know, how the dynamic works, even with someone else in another tradition. Dear Dr. Rana, that both of us knew so well. Many years ago, when we began the Abrahamic textual dialogue, it began with Samuel Ansari. Samuel Ansari was the Muslim imam of the North St. Louis Mosque on Grand. They are not immigrant Muslims. They are American-born Muslims in that North Mosque. And I was encouraged to approach him to dialogue on the Quran. And so we met at a restaurant on Grand and Lindell called the Golden Dynasty. Some of you remember it's standing on the corner there before the sculpture park is there now. And I kid you not, he came, but with 2 bodyguards. He came with 2 bodyguards. He did not know what to expect from this bunch of Christians, you know. So then we went down to his mosque and we did Quran for a while. I would take off my shoes, we'd go in and we'd do Quran. And then he died. He just died quietly in a parking lot. He was found in his car. And we thought, well, now who do we dialogue with? So Dr. Rana came and said, I'll be glad to come over to Aquinas. And I thought, oh, that's intimidating for him, coming into this Catholic atmosphere, you know, and so I said, well, all right, Dr. Rana, but we'll do your book. We'll meet at our place, but we'll do your book. We'll do just the Quran, you know. So for 5 years, we did the Quran. He gave us a wonderful background for the whole book and how it came to be and everything else. Then one day, he came and he said, sister, he said, you know, I don't understand you Christians. I said, what, Dr. Rana? He said, well, you believe God has a biological son. I said, what? Will you repeat that? He said, well, you believe God has a biological son. Will you talk about the Son of God? And it hit me, you know, the way those words were heard by a Muslim. So I said, oh, no, Dr. Rana, no, we don't believe God. God is spirit. God doesn't have a biological son. That's a figure of speech that's God's mind, that God expresses God's mind in a word, and that word is called his begotten, his son. Well, he looked at me as if, you know, well, but I've been thinking another way all along. Now I'm telling this story, not because of clearing up the understanding, but to get at what Susan and I, really wanted to make central, and that is, he would never have asked that of me if he didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
He felt unthreatened, and he could say, I don't understand you Christians. And he knew I was not going to threaten him or not going to say, what's the matter with you? You know, none of that, none of that. That's, I think, that's the hospitality of the heart where we have to begin. He was the most open Muslim I've ever met in my life. And most Muslims are not open because they're like Catholics were years ago. We've got the truth and you're not going to tell us anything.
You
And
know,
that's rigidity. But he was not rigid. He was open, and from that came 15 years of extreme, intense learning from each other.
Yeah.
Susan, what were you going to say?
no, I was going to say, yeah, I think Dr. Rana opened a door. Rudy talks about Dr. Bastani, who is also, and there are a number of imams now that are. The thing about Dr. Rana was, he was he was he was a fundamentalist in many ways about his faith. He was. There was no question that he had certainty and certitude about his faith, right? And we were friends. Carla May, remember when we went to see him? He was so sick he couldn't leave his house, and you and I, we went and we just listened to his life. He told us the story of his life. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there is and I think maybe that speaks to how we do approach people who are, I mean, we have to try, right? The Josh Hawleys and I mean, that.
Ask them questions they cannot answer.
Well, but also
ask them gently questions that they'll be thinking of when they're falling asleep at night or when they're in the shower. The human mind cannot resist a question. They'll want to put an answer to it. And that is the way to lead them, I think, from fear and defensiveness to realizing they do not understand this situation.
We often say to go from, there are two words for fear, many words for fear in Hebrew, but two of them that we often quote are pachad, which is real fear that makes you do things that, out of fear, that maybe are hurtful to other people. And then the other word for fear is yira. So you go from pachad to yira. Yira is also the fear of God. When we talk about the fear of God,
that's awe.
Oh, thank you.
That's awe. That's a holy fear.
Right. So it's turning fear to awe. And that's I think part of the process of what we have to do. The other thing I want to say about, I preached at Samuel Ansari's of blessed memory, his masjid. Bringing up, wow, memories of, talk about crossing boundaries. When I walked, he invited me to come and speak there, and just walking in there, I remember, this white Jewish woman, what are you doing here? You remember what that was like? And but he made space. I mean, I think when you do reach out and you do listen and you do show respect, people who are not likely will make space for you. And I know that CRC people will remember that because of this relationship, right? Because of these relationships that we've worked on, and this is how we began. I'll kind of end the way we began. The way that we made these relationships in this community, right, Carla May, is by spending time with each other, by listening to each other, by eating together, by going into each other's places of worship, by showing up. And on 9/11, on that horrible Tuesday, when other cities were exploding in hate crimes against Muslims, it was Hebrew school that day, and Dr. Rana showed up. And somehow the news heard that CRC was having a service, because we always had a service in those days on Tuesdays because it was Hebrew school. And we opened it up, and I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people showed up because people needed it. They needed to pray that day. Even people who didn't use God language, right? But Dr. Rana showed up too.
He knew where he was safe, Susan.
He came to CRC, and I saw him sitting in the back row, and I said, "Oh my God, is that you, Dr. Rana?" And we led a service together. I mean, I know that some of you were there. And that's this work. That's what it means to avoid the sin of certitude. And before we close, I'm seeing that there are 2 questions in the chat. Oh, nope, I think those are just that Dr. Bastani is open, and Sarah Mark says to you, Carla May, thank you for that insight. I've never heard it quite like described that way. So, dear friends, I thank you for showing up. I want to thank Carla May for giving us all this time tonight. The book is available through Interfaith Partnership, and we did it as a fundraiser for the Interfaith Partnership. So you could certainly, I mean, I don't know if it's worth it, but if you want to buy it on Amazon, you can. But Philip says it's worth the read. Is that what you're saying, Philip? Thank you. I can't say it myself, but
could you please put that contact information in the chat? Because I was actually going to ask that. I'm trying
how
to
to get the book?
Yes, because I'm trying to avoid Amazon at the
Yes,
moment because
great.
of their labor practices. So,
Carla, how do people? It was on the flyer.
Yeah, it's very simple. You just go to Interfaith Partnership STL.
Okay.
I think it's Interfaith STL, no partnership. Interfaith STL/donors.
Okay.
And it's advertised on their donor page, and you can fill in the information and either pick it up from them or have them mail it to you.
Thank you. And Sister Carla, I had a question for you actually. What you referred to a book earlier on the topic of intimacy. What is that title exactly?
Oh, that's available from me or from Amazon also. It's called it's a quirky little thing. The Reform I'm trying to think of the right denomination. A Lutheran group said we want a book on the liturgy, and we want a Catholic to write it. So it's called Seasons of the Soul.
Okay. I was Googling it earlier, and that's the one I found that I thought might be
Seasons of the Soul
on the liturgical year.
An intimate God in liturgical time. It sounds very proper.
It's really steamy. It's great.
Because it's really a takeoff from the Song of Songs that the Catholic community sees the relationship with Jesus in a love relationship that mirrors the Song of Songs. And so in the liturgical year, she can't get him out of her mind. She starts with the birth, and then, it goes through all the seasons of the Sundays of the year, and then the Passion, and then his resurrection. And then she's like, you can't get him out of my mind. And so that's kind of how the liturgical year for Catholics is really constructed. We have Advent, and then we have Lent, and then we have Easter, and then Pentecost time, and the seasons of growing were all the green Sundays. So you're going to get a lot of Catholic liturgy in that book, but the basis of it is a relationship, really.
Thank you.
Brody, do you have your hand up there?
Oh, I do.
Okay.
Just speaking of interfaith partnership, they had last year, they had this webinar series on different religions, which was very intriguing, very in-depth, very interesting. This year is the follow-up. It's been on practicing religion, where every week somebody has come in from different faiths to talk about a particular topic and how that faith observes. Interestingly, tonight, our session was turned over to participants. And our session tonight was going to be, we had a list of questions about how we do things and how we, like, you know, on our meals and how we pray and when, just various things that as the participants, this was the first time that we were going to be open to speak about these things to each other. So I thought what a beautiful parallel to have this tonight with the two of you, the same night that Interfaith Partnership is doing this with their participants.
The more, the better.
Yeah.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you to each and every one of you for showing up tonight. And
The
for
more we do
inviting
it,
us.
the more we do it, the more war will become impossible.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because we're all family. Yeah, we won't want to hurt anybody. So thank you. Thank you for showing up. And, you know, we're always learning on Tuesday nights at CRC. And as many of you know, Jim and I started 134 Psalms ago. Every morning at 9:30, we offer another Psalm except on Shabbat. And we're up to tomorrow. We'll be at, God willing, Inshallah, Psalm 135. That's at 9:30, but they're also on YouTube. And stay tuned because Carla May and I are going to have a podcast after Passover and Easter. So let us wish everyone a meaningful Passover, a meaningful Easter this year.
Yes.
I know it's been a really tough year. That was the first holiday that we couldn't have last year was Passover and Easter, if you remember, and it made everything, it changed everything.
For us
So I
too.
guess,
Yes.
yeah, it changed everything for us, and so I hope we'll take the good things that have changed into this next year, and reclaim, you know, the things that we've lost, but also not go back to the way things were, but keep moving forward. Keep moving forward. So may it be a sweet season for all of you. And again, thanks for coming. And Carla May,
Thank you, Susan. Thank you.
thank you. We love you.
Love you too.
Thanks so much.
Good night, everybody.
Have a great night, everyone. And thanks
Good
to
night.
Amy Smucha for putting the right thing in the chat there.
Thank you.
All righty. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.